Hey, what's going on, everybody? Boilon here, and welcome back to another video on Marvel Strike Force. Now, in today's video, we're going to be talking about two interesting teams that have two similar in some way purposes, as they're both Alliance War teams, but one that kind of, in my opinion, inches out a little bit more. I've been asked this question about what they should be doing right now in their roster. Should they be doing Alpha Flight, or should they be doing Mercs for money? Now, this is my alt account, which is why explains why Old Man Logan is level 94. Now, a lot of people who follow my channel know that I don't value Alliance War that heavily. So it's kind of funny because they're both Alliance War teams. And yes, Alpha Flight is also serving a double purpose for raids, and we're going to talk about this. But this isn't a nowhere situation, where I used to hate on that team a lot, and I still kind of do. But Mercs for Money is not actually as bad as nowhere, in my opinion, because Old Man Logan is just the GOAT, right? Like, he's just insane. He's so OP. And so that gives the team then a little bit more value. And I think it's funny because actually the main counter to Alpha Flight is none other than Mercs for Money. So we're going to talk about that and what that means for the game going forward. So if you're ready to go, let's boil this down. Now, I have both of my accounts kind of up simultaneously because I kind of want to just show this as a comparison point. And so my alt alliance, which is, I'm level 94, my account's level 94 there. I am running Spotlight 1 or Spotlight Raid D0, whereas my main account, runs Spotlight Raid D2. And so it's going to be about 2 weeks from now by the time the Sasquatch's offer gets released. And that's going to be really important because if you want to push those Spotlight raids, especially if you're in the D2 category, but frankly, if you're in any of them, you're going to want to push towards 70%, and then maybe you might even be able to go towards the 100% because you're not going to get a huge difference in turn. Like, it actually caps out. It's the same amount of Crimson Gear rate, the red orbs, the regular red orbs, but you're going to get more T4s and you're going to get a little bit more on the Armory 19s. And so that's going to be valuable to some people. I want to make sure that I'm at least getting to 70%. And so I think that if you want to kind of save your course for a particular character, it would be Sasquatch, because the free-to-play version that comes out after the offers tend to be about almost 2 weeks now. I think North Star was actually about 2 weeks between the offer and the free-to-play event. And so that means that if you unlock Sasquatch, who's only a 2-star character, you're going to get a 2-week head start on being able to gear them and get yourself into the Spotlight raids and pushing towards that 70% for you and your alliance, or basically anyone who unlocks them early. You'll be able to start doing those Alpha Flight nodes for your alliance to help push into that 70% bracket. I do want to kind of compare, though, the 70% from here. So 15K and 1K. I believe the T4s are the same, but I just wanted to double check here anyways, that the 70%, I believe it is 50, but it's 10K and 500. So it's a difference of, what is that, 5,000 fragments. That is quite a bit on a daily basis, like 2.5 orbs. I don't know why I keep doing this. But anyways, so a quarter of an armory orb and then 2.5 red orbs. So, over the course of like a month, that's going to scale up, obviously. But even at the D0, you're going to want to make sure that you have this team. So, a lot of people have asked me, like, what am I doing right now? And even on my alt account, I am building up my Alpha Flight team. And I want to show you, saw my other account. I'm slowly building them up here, but I'm kind of putting this into perspective right now with my alliance and the D0, D1 range, because that's what we're kind of currently at. A lot of our players are kind of in that account level, like 80 to 85 to 95. I don't know if we really have any hundreds, not very many if we do. And so I've been building up my Sunfire and my Wolverine, who's at G16. I'll probably take them to 90, but I'm not going to take them too much higher than that because I'm at 94, right? And I'm just prepping for DD6, so I have to be careful about that. And then obviously I'll be unlocking these characters free to play. I don't have the core leverage to be able to do like I do on my main account for Alpha Flight here, but they are a priority because I think it's going to be really important, especially for those who are on bigger accounts who are kind of pushing into that Dark Dimension 7 and you're wanting to get further, because this is huge. This is a lot of red gear that you're going to be getting on a daily basis. So even getting 2 weeks early access by unlocking Sasquatch a little bit early is going to make a pretty big difference. But if you watched my video the other day about prepping for a North Star's free to play event, I think those shards are going to be really important because if you watch my playtest video that I did on the Spotlight Raid Alpha Flight nodes, it is it's even pretty challenging if you have 5 yellow, 5 red, G18, level 95. And so you kind of really need to, if you're doing D2, you kind of really need to take these characters up pretty high to not have a horrible experience. And so that way, I do want to make sure, I'm probably going to push North Star up to 100, frankly, because I don't know if I'm going to get 5 star by the time that I start the Spotlight raids. And so I'm going to be a little bit further back than what I was in the playtest server. So unless the playtest server was like significantly harder than what it is on the live servers, I'm kind of expecting that all my characters are probably going to need to get bumped up to 100 so I don't have a terrible time. And so this kind of brings in the importance that raids, people know that follow the Boilon channel that yes, raids are very important. Now, my hope is that like after the spot, I don't know how long we're going to have spotlight raids, this version of it. And my hope is that Alpha Flight doesn't completely disappear off the board after that, because yes, that they do have a dual purpose with Alliance War Defense, and they are a very strong team there. And in raids, but I just don't want them to, because a lot of their kit actually, there is raid callouts. It's a fair bit of raid callout. It's a dual game mode thing, but I just don't want it to drop completely. So I'm hoping that if you watch my other video where I talked about maybe Origin raids are being kaput, and it makes me wonder if Alpha Flight is going to be one of those future raid teams, possibly for a main raid. I would feel really good if that ends up being the case because, a lot of players don't like to build for Alliance War Defense. And I also don't like the idea of them just being a 3 to 4 month raid team. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Like, yes, it serves a dual game mode purpose, but then after Spotlight 1 goes away, unless they get conveyor belted down to where Spider Society is right now, and that's their position in Spotlight Raid 2, it does feel weird to release a team to have a raid call out to then only be useful for like 4 months. So let me know what your thoughts are on that. I'm still leaning towards the removal of the Origin raid teams, but that's just me. Like, I just have this feeling with Alpha Flight, and who knows what's coming next, unless they, depends. If they go for a full Mystic raid team, then maybe that's not the case. I guess we'll find out in the near future. So how do you beat Alpha Flight in war defense? Well, there's a couple of ways, and I already alluded to that earlier on. And the first main way that a lot of people, especially who did the Old Man Logan event, is going to be Mercs for money. I will tell you that if you have a reasonably built team, and actually most of the work, like 80% of the work, 90% of the work is done by Old Man Logan. And you could, assuming if you had Panda Pool docking to 75 G14 and Death Pool where they are for, Apocalypse, I guess, and things like that, you could probably set this in auto. and beat Alpha Flight. Now, maybe not if they're like all 100 and like 7 yellow, 7 red, maybe not. But for the most part, they can punch up a fair deal against Alpha Flight. I would say at least 2x. I didn't do it that much because it was actually punching across, but I did do a punch up as well. So I would at least a 2x punch up, maybe a 2.5x punch up. Like it's pretty interesting that this is the main counter. It is not the only counter to Alpha Flight. There are other combinations of teams such as Sinister Six with Apocalypse. So because Alpha Flight spawns with Safeguard on war defense, so it's really important that you use characters that are kind of mitigate that, which is Apocalypse essentially for beating that. But if you're someone like my alt account, right, and you don't have big Apocalypse, or maybe you don't have Apocalypse at all, and Alpha Flight is like a free to play team, right, that you're just going to be able to get through standard events, then you might be in trouble. And you might be in trouble if you don't have Old Man Logan. Then you're probably fucked, actually. So that'll mean that Alpha Flight's going to be much more valuable for players in that kind of early and mid game range, or at least in the mid game range, right? Like you're doing like Spotlight D0, and then you're going to get a significant amount of value from Alpha Flight because the other team, the other enemies, players in your range are not necessarily going to have a lot of characters that they can use to beat them. So I'm wondering, at least on the lower end of Alliance War, if Alpha Flight ends up becoming like a Heroes for Hire 2.0. I know there is the exhaust mechanic, and so they get a lot easier when you start putting exhaust. But at least they're going to get a couple of wins, I think, in the mid game category. In the end game category, I think a lot of people will just save their Mercs for money offense to be able to deal with that. And then, of course, if hopefully you have Apocalypse as well, and you might be able to do another like a Sinister Six Apocalypse. I'm not the most well versed when it comes to Alliance War. I just know there's a few counters out there so far, and I'm sure as more people get their hands on them, there may be some other ones. But like I said, I didn't really expect that because they are, again, a non-legendary team. Alpha Flight is a non-legendary team. So let's get back to Mercs for Money, right? And so what kind of value does Mercs for Money have outside of Alliance War? Well, I mean, so let's just put it this way. I don't need to talk about it, right? Old Man Logan is OP as shit. Like, he's everywhere. He's in Arena. He's in Dark Dimension. He's in Crucible. He's in Alliance War. Like, he is everywhere. And I think the reason why he's so OP, like, you guys know, if you're using him, like, nothing that he has, none of his kit is actually locked to Alliance War, which is primarily what him and the team is meant to be. I don't think there's anything except for the awakened ability. So on war offense, blah 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 blah, and then even that's not the revive once to Dakin is not even an Alliance War, and I don't even know. No, that's not. None of the passive stats are in war. None of it. So he's just. I think they really the basic does okay. If this character is claws out, apply defense down, and then 2 regeneration on war offense. Fine, whatever. It's not even that game breaking. It's not game breaking at all. But Old Man Logan, on the other hand, is game breaking. That being said, I don't want them to nerf him. I think they just went a bit too far on a legendary release. Like, I don't know. So tit for tat, like Old Man Logan versus Nova, because they were both war offense, war legendary characters, and Nova was nowhere near the same amount of impact, despite having a battlefield effect. Nova's, in my opinion, was actually, honestly, the battlefield effect was overall weaker than a character like Red Hulk with theirs. So that's why I've always been like shitting on Nowhere, just because like I felt the impact of them was very minor in terms of like if you didn't have them, it didn't really make that big of a difference. A lot of the teams that you needed Nowhere to beat could be beat by other characters. And the same can be said for Mercs for Money, that you don't need Mercs for Money to beat Alpha Flight, but it is going to be the easiest one to do it. And you might notice on my main account here, I do have Panda Pool and Dakin at 54. Why 54 actually? It's just so I have level 4 in the passive. I may consider taking to 64 for the T4 passive, but I really don't want to like over invest in these characters just because I don't feel that they have a ton of value outside of Alliance War. I'm not using them in Crucible. I'm using Old Man Logan in a mixed combo. I've kind of experimented both on defense and offense. I don't think full Mercs for Money is a very good team in Crucible, at least as the full. You see it often with, usually without Deathpool, and you have like Spider-Man Noir or something like that, or some other hybrid variation of that. But yeah, I'm not putting too, and they're not farmable, right? And so even after their events have all come and gone, I have a 4-star Panda Pool and a 3-star Dakin. I forgot it's the month long right now, so I might get up to a 4-star Dakin. But I mean, really at the end of the day, it's still like another month away before I get them up to, and it's just, I feel like they really need the stars too. And so that's why I haven't really put that much effort into them. And I don't think I will. But I do encourage getting them to at least 54 so you can use them as like a reasonable war offense team with their stats, because honestly their passives kind of just power up everyone else. And so once you get to the level 4, you get all this crit chance for Mercs for Money, which really just fuels all of this is just fueling Old Man Logan. That's entirely what this is for. All of this is just buffing Logan, because Logan just goes around and solos everyone, and it doesn't really matter. Surprisingly, I've actually done decent. Maybe it's that 1 diamond on Deadpool. Even at 75 G14, I've actually had some pretty good additional focus to be able to land this stun here on the alt. So I've actually hit people like 95 G18 and landed that stun, which is quite surprising. It's probably all the additional focus coming from the character's passes. But yeah, I just wanted to mention that you don't need to build this team very high, but they are going to serve some value. So I wouldn't keep them at level 1. But for characters like my alt account, it's not going to be a priority to even bring them up to where my main account has them until I'm beaten Dark Dimension 6. So I'm trying to do like a dual video here where I'm trying to keep in mind players who are not in game and players who are. So right now, this is my alt account, and they're going to stay exactly there. Honestly, I have no reason to bring any of these other characters from my alt account. And so for those of you who are watching this video and are kind of in a similar boat to this account, I would just go full ahead on Alpha Flight. Actually, if you're on the main account, I would also just go ahead and do Alpha Flight. But I am considering Mercs for Money a little bit for the purposes of beating Alpha Flight. And that's what I am concerned of a little bit, because everybody is going to have this team to the goddamn moon, because you're going to get a lot of red gear by gearing them up. And it won't be surprising if you see G18 level 100 across the board in a couple of weeks. In full defense teams. And the good thing is that if you do a sack attack against them, it's going to eliminate a lot of their kit, which has the exhaust stuff that's mentioned in here. If they, basically all this stuff doesn't happen if they're exhausted. So that's something, I guess. And I guess for mid game accounts, it's going to make them a little bit easier to beat. But I think a lot of people don't want to do that if at all possible, and you're going to need Mercs for money to be able to do that. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword here. And I'm wondering, how maybe I need to go back onto the test server a little bit, maybe check that out a little bit and see, basically how high can Mercs for money punch up against Alpha Flight. And that might be something for next time, because I do need to get my test account reset so that I can try some of this stuff at a little bit of a lower tier. And maybe do some additional work on maybe 3-star Alpha Flight for the Alpha Flight, the Spotlight raid nodes as well, and see if I can do that. I have done it at 5.5, have not tried it at 3.3. That's a little bit of a concern for me, especially for my alt account, but also for my main running D2 as well. Anyways, that's it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. What are your plans for the next couple of weeks? Are you doing Mercs for money? Are you doing Alpha Flight? Which one is your priority? Are you going to do both? Maybe you just got a shit ton of gold and you're saving, or you've already worked on Mercs for money, and then this video just didn't matter for you. But hopefully there was a lot of people that was asking me what my priorities were, and I was just trying to lay them out for you here and my justifications as for why. They're both good teams, but I think that Alpha Flight is still going to have a little bit more value because I do value Alliance raids and the rewards that you're getting on a daily basis. And I actually didn't even touch on the gold improvement in Alliance War, but I just don't think that's still enough to really justify putting heavy investments into Mercs for money. Just my thoughts. That's the end of the video, everyone. And until next time, stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you all later. Boilon signing out.